To the left, we have the Sony A95K. To the right, we have the Samsung S95B. Now, this comparison is to challenge Sony on their Master Series claim, which basically states that essentially this is the director's intent. Out of the box, this is what it's supposed to look like. Now, you can choose one of two modes to pull this off and replicate this result. Right now, I'm using IMAX Enhanced, which if we go over to movie mode or cinema, it basically looks exactly the same. There's kind of no real difference either way you look. So I choose to go with IMAX Enhanced because I really like that mode. And again, this is the so-called director's intent. But I feel like if I use cinema or IMAX Enhanced, people will complain. So you know what? Let's just go straight up into cinema mode and just use that mode. Okay, now, another thing I want to point out is the Samsung S95B, its peak brightness has been reduced to basically 0. I turned off the peak brightness feature, so there is no peak brightness happening right now on the Samsung. So the brightness boost and gains, all that's going to happen later on in the calibrated comparison where both go back up head to head again, but with with the Sony here being taken beyond reference standards here to the master TV that I know it can be or could be with my setup, right? So that's going to come later on. Don't worry, there'll be settings for everybody. So I got you either way. But for now, we're going to show you what Sony gives you. So out of the box, master calibration to the director's intent, can it hold its own? Well, so far, the answer is unequivocally no, because as you're seeing, you're just losing out in gradations and gradients. You lack the same level of color. I mean, you could see the image to the right just having so much more color, way more expressive, and that's going to be a theme reoccurring all throughout. One thing I do like about Sony is that out-of-the-box skin tones are okay, but it kind of comes at the expense of almost everything else that the picture has to offer. Pretty much every major color is dim and dull and lifeless, and that's something that's going to be a reoccurring theme. I'm not even joking. See, the fact that they think that this is the accurate color that the sky should be just does not make sense to me, because it doesn't look like a dark blue, and that's kind of the whole point. Like, sky blue is known to be a lighter blue. Yes, there are varying amounts of times of day, so I guess maybe we can say that this is an overcast day, but essentially that's kind of the vibe that Sony is going for all the time here. Another thing that really bugs me is reds are not really red out of the box. Like, you have to really work on it unless you're, again, using one of the more artificial modes like vivid. Now, that's a problem because, again, I don't know why you'd have this disparaging amount of red color loss versus something like this, but you are having that in the cinema mode. So if they think that that's the cinematic red, I don't know why they would use that. That's not red. It's like literally, look up the color. It's called blood orange. That is what they're giving you here. And for that, you could just go with an LG OLED because that's kind of the same vibe here. And again, if we look at skin tones, it doesn't mean that Sony always gets it right. Like the lady on the left here now, she looks like she has jaundice in the skin versus actually having the proper skin tone here. So that's one of those things I really don't appreciate. But again, it's going to be a personal preference thing, I imagine, because maybe some people like the jaundice look and call it reference accurate. I'm not one of those people. The landscape here, as far as the buildingscape, the cityscape, looks way better on the Samsung S95B to the right with master TV calibration settings. Again, you can pick those up for $5 here on the channel. You can ask me and I'll help you out, but essentially you're seeing the difference in color right out the gate. It's big. It's not even as small as some people try to make it sound like it's minute or it's not a big deal. And the reason why I'm showing this off is because this has been named the king of all OLED TVs. Basically, reference standard, it's the best, it's also the brightest. And that's not true because, again, I turned the peak brightness feature for this TV off. There is no amount of enhancement happening to the peak brightness abilities of this TV to the right with the Samsung S95B, where the Sony is kind of more of the same, I imagine, because I know Sony likes to use light sensor or whatever, so I wanted to level the playing field, but even when you do that, the Samsung is still brighter. This is going to give you a lot more in the way of color volume, and that probably is why Sony isn't really able to hit as many of the colors as Samsung can hit, because the color volume is not quite as high. Now, again, this building scene should kind of let you know more of the same as we look at the vibrancy behind the dress and the sky. It's like Samsung is just producing more of a true quantum dot feeling experience where Sony is not doing that. I mean, like, honestly, you've seen a picture that looks like this before. I can almost guarantee you've seen the tired, worn out 30-year-old reference standard look, and that's what Sony has constantly gone for. I cannot stress how important beyond reference standards go because look at this picture. It will speak 1,000 words into existence. Her skin tone is correct here. It is incorrect here. Somehow, Sony has figured out a way to make a quantum dot OLED out of the box look like a WRGB OLED or WOLED, which is what we have with LG. The importance of that is the WOLEDs are significantly cheaper. by thousands of dollars. And Sony out of the box is giving you a picture that looks like a WOLED, and this looks like a real quantum dot television. Let this picture sink in. This is the difference between a Master TV Calibrator and Sony's Master Series calibration, as they like to say. It's a big difference. And again, the difference can be seen in every single scene. She looks dead here. And again, I showed you, like, I'm not doing anything to make the Sony look worse. Run these settings for you, okay? We're in cinema mode, out of the box. We're gonna go to the picture settings, and every single thing here is exactly how Sony set it up. And again, the importance of this comparison is to kind of dispel a lot of the hype around this TV, like, oh, it's just like a slam dunk. This is the TV you get when you got money. You know, you got money, buy this TV, because this is accurate out of the box. It doesn't need calibration. Like, all of the ignorance that I've heard around this model has really been established by reporters that want to sell you this television above everything else and try to paint the Samsung S95B as a budget TV. I don't even know how that could come out of their mouth given the price point, but that's what they're trying to go with. And it's not a budget TV at all. And so I'm showing you guys here, I've made no adjustments to the Sony A95K. It is stock, it is out of the box. This, I promise you, is what you're going to see. You are going to have to calibrate this. And good luck, because most calibrators do not like my beyond reference way of doing things, where we warm up skin tones, we make things have life back, and we bring them back from the morgue. I'll do that for this particular television, but I want you to remember, just look at how dead she looks here. I'll take her beyond reference, and I'll show you that in the next comparison we do between these two. But as you can clearly see, Samsung is not cartoony like they try to claim, like the skin tones are inaccurate and they're awful. It's actually spanking the pants off of this Sony. And again, this is with what Sony claims as a Master Series calibration, like their engineers, their team of engineers that know so much about Hollywood standards and all that did such a good job. And this is what I'm doing. So let that sink in. This is important. I cannot, bro. You could not make this stuff up if you tried. This is the industry that the television market has kind of turned into. And nobody's going to show you this. There's no money in outing Sony for like literally saying this is like the best calibration money can buy, and then pointing out the fact that there is a level beyond that. People don't want to do that. I'll be the first and maybe the only. But at the end of the day, you need to know that the color advantage on the Samsung is huge. Samsung like looks phenomenal. I mean, look at this lady right now on the picture. You see every little color. Look at that little color splotch in the back, and look at it on Sony with their calibration. It's a big difference, and I mean huge, right? Now, the importance of this is to show you skin tones, is to show you color. Even the brightness, when I lower it down, I took away peak brightness. I told you guys, peak brightness feature turned off completely. And look at the difference. It's day and night, right? And I mean, look at her skin tones. They're gorgeous skin tones. The color paletry is beautiful. If we look at the lipstick, right, we really can see the flaws in Sony's color processing for cinema mode. We can see, look at the lipstick. They're a blood orange red, where on the Samsung, right over here, they're true rich red. And we don't even have to do that. We can just compare it to this, where you can clearly see the red is terrible compared to the rich true red that we have here. Again, I don't know what Sony has done for their quantum dot OLED for cinema mode, but this is not it. Like, that's not how you calibrate. Like, maybe it is if you're just using computer software and you're not adhering to the human element. But that's the other reason I wanted to make this comparison, because they're talking about cognitive processor, human vision. They're trying to pretend like what their AI processing is doing with the XR chip is better than what a human being can achieve, but you're clearly seeing in real time that is just not the case. Sony has a very long way to go before they could ever match somebody like me and pretty much anyone else who has a similar ability, because as you're seeing, colors are washed out, they're muted, and it doesn't look like you bought a quantum dot OLED TV at all. I mean, look at these whites. They actually look blue versus this that looks actually white. Like, what was their target white point? Iceberg blue? Like, I don't understand. I'm trying to understand it and I'm failing miserably. But for the first comparison, I wanted to show you guys the difference, and hopefully you can see some of it here. The next comparison will be the beyond reference calibration setting, but again, wait for that and I'll let you guys know. Thanks so much for watching the #1 brand in honesty. Keep it locked for more, subscribe for more, and until the next video,